The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Kate sat at her writing desk, her hands trembling slightly as she held her morning tea. The delicate china cup rattled against the saucer, betraying the storm of emotions brewing within her. She had always prided herself on maintaining composure, even in the most challenging circumstances, but today felt different. Today, she could feel something inside her reaching a breaking point. 4 months now, Kate had been watching from the sidelines as Camilla systematically worked to undermine her position within the royal family. What had started as subtle comments and seemingly innocent suggestions had evolved into something far more sinister. The queen consort had been playing a careful game, one that Kate was only beginning to understand in its full complexity. It had begun shortly after the coronation, when the new dynamics of the royal hierarchy were still settling. Kate remembered the first incident clearly. During a family gathering at Balmoral, Camilla had made what appeared to be a casual observation about Kate's approach to royal duties. Perhaps Catherine might benefit from understanding how these traditions have been honored for generations, she had said, her voice carrying that particular tone of authority that brooked no argument. William had been present, but seemed oblivious to the underlying message. He was focused on a conversation with his father about environmental initiatives, completely missing the way Camilla's eyes had fixed on Kate with calculating precision. That was when Kate first realized that Camilla saw her not as family, but as competition. The weeks that followed brought a series of seemingly small incidents that, taken together, painted a troubling picture. Camilla would suggest alternative approaches to Kate's charitable work, always framing her comments as helpful guidance from someone with more experience. She would make subtle references to Diana during family dinners, comments that felt designed to remind everyone of the complicated history and Kate's position as the second wife to eventually hold the title of Princess of Wales. Kate found herself constantly on edge, second-guessing decisions she would have made confidently before. When she planned events for her patronages, she wondered if Camilla would find fault with her choices. When she spoke with the press, she worried about how her words might be twisted or criticized later. The confidence that had always been one of her greatest strengths was slowly being eroded by Camilla's persistent campaign of subtle undermining. The situation became more complex when Kate noticed that Camilla was also working to influence William. During family meetings, the Queen Consort would make suggestions about how the Prince and Princess of Wales might better align their work with the overall royal strategy. These suggestions always sounded reasonable on the surface, but Kate began to realize they were designed to limit her independence and reduce her profile within the family. William, for his part, seemed genuinely confused by Kate's growing concerns. When she tried to explain what was happening, he would listen patiently, but then offer explanations that gave Camilla the benefit of the doubt. "She's just trying to help," he would say, "or you might be reading too much into it." His inability to see what was happening right in front of him became another source of frustration for Kate. The breaking point came during a planning meeting for a major royal event. Kate had spent weeks developing a comprehensive approach that would highlight the causes she cared most about while fulfilling her royal obligations. She had researched every detail, consulted with experts, and prepared what she believed was an excellent proposal. Camilla attended the meeting ostensibly as an observer, but it quickly became clear she had other intentions. As Kate presented her ideas, the Queen Consort began asking pointed questions that seemed designed to highlight potential problems rather than find solutions. "Have you considered how this might conflict with existing commitments?" she asked. "Are you certain this approach aligns with traditional expectations?" Each question felt like a small knife, designed to chip away at Kate's confidence and authority. But the real blow came when Camilla suggested that perhaps someone with more experience should take the lead on this particular initiative. "Catherine has such wonderful ideas," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But perhaps she might benefit from working alongside someone who understands the full complexity of these undertakings." Kate felt her face flush with anger and embarrassment as the other attendees shifted uncomfortably in their seats. She realized that this wasn't just about one event or one disagreement. This was about Camilla systematically working to position herself as the ultimate authority on all royal matters, reducing Kate to a junior member who needed constant guidance and supervision. That evening, Kate found herself walking alone through the palace gardens, trying to process what had happened. The perfectly manicured hedges and blooming flowers provided a stark contrast to the turmoil in her mind. She thought about all the years she had spent preparing for this role, all the careful study and gradual integration into royal life. She thought about the promises William had made about their partnership and their shared vision for the future of the monarchy. Most painfully, she thought about her children and what kind of example she was setting for them. George, Charlotte, and Louis were watching how she handled these challenges, learning from her responses about dignity, strength, and standing up for what was right. The thought that she might be teaching them to accept unfair treatment or to allow others to diminish their worth was almost unbearable. When William returned home that night, Kate was waiting for him in their private sitting room. The fire was crackling in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. But the warmth of the room couldn't chase away the chill in Kate's heart. She had made a decision during her walk in the gardens, and she knew there was no turning back. "We need to talk," she said quietly as he entered the room. Something in her voice must have conveyed the seriousness of the moment, because William immediately set down his briefcase and gave her his full attention. Kate took a deep breath and began to speak. She told him about the months of subtle undermining, the constant questioning of her judgment, the systematic attempts to reduce her authority and independence. She explained how Camilla's behavior was affecting not just her work, but her confidence and her sense of place within the family. William listened carefully, his expression growing more serious as Kate continued her account. She could see him starting to understand the pattern she was describing, beginning to recognize incidents he had witnessed, but not fully processed at the time. "I've tried to handle this quietly," Kate said, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "I've tried to be understanding and patient. I've made excuses and given her the benefit of the doubt. But I can't continue to do that while she systematically works to undermine everything I'm trying to accomplish." The conversation continued late into the night as Kate laid out specific examples, and William began to see the full scope of what had been happening. For the first time, she saw a real anger flash in his eyes as he understood how his stepmother had been treating his wife. "Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" he asked, and Kate could hear both concern and frustration in his voice. "Because I hoped it would stop," Kate replied honestly. "Because I wanted to believe that family could work through these issues without creating larger conflicts. Because I didn't want to put you in an impossible position." But as they talked through the night, it became clear that the situation had moved beyond the possibility of quiet resolution. Camilla's behavior was not going to change, and Kate could no longer continue to absorb the constant pressure and criticism. Something would have to give, and Kate was determined that it would not be her dignity or her role as William's equal partner. As dawn approached, Kate made one thing perfectly clear to her husband. "I have reached my limit," she said, looking directly into his eyes. "I cannot and will not continue to accept this treatment. Something has to change, William. Either she respects my position and stops this behavior, or we need to have a very different conversation about our future." The weight of her words hung in the air between them as the first light of morning began to filter through the windows. Kate had drawn her line in the sand, and now it was up to William to decide which side he would stand on. The days following Kate's ultimatum passed in a tense silence that seemed to permeate every corner of their private quarters. William had listened to everything she said, and she could see the wheels turning in his mind as he processed the full extent of what had been happening. But understanding the problem and knowing how to solve it were two very different things, and Kate watched her husband struggle with the implications of what she had revealed. During this period of uncertainty, Camilla seemed to sense that something had shifted. Rather than backing down, however, she appeared to double down on her efforts to consolidate her influence. It was as if she could feel Kate's resistance growing stronger and was determined to crush it before it could take root. The Queen Consort's next move came during a routine meeting about upcoming royal engagements. Kate had been looking forward to this particular session, as it involved planning for several causes that were deeply important to her. She had prepared thoroughly, bringing detailed proposals and research that she hoped would demonstrate both her commitment and her competence. Camilla arrived at the meeting with a folder of her own, which immediately put Kate on alert. As the discussion began, it became clear that the Queen Consort had done her own research into Kate's proposed activities. But rather than offering support or constructive suggestions, Camilla began systematically dismantling each of Kate's ideas. "I'm concerned about the messaging here," Camilla said, her voice carrying the tone of someone who expected to be taken seriously. "This approach might send the wrong signal about our priorities as a family. We need to be very careful about how we present ourselves to the public." Kate felt her jaw tighten as she listened to Camilla's critique. Each point was carefully crafted to sound reasonable and thoughtful, but Kate could see the underlying agenda. The Queen Consort was positioning herself as the guardian of royal tradition and propriety, with Kate cast in the role of an inexperienced outsider who needed constant guidance and correction. But the real shock came when Camilla pulled out a document that Kate had never seen before. It was a proposed restructuring of royal duties that would significantly reduce Kate's independent responsibilities while expanding Camilla's oversight role. According to this plan, all major decisions about Kate's engagements would need to be approved by a committee that Camilla would chair. "This is just a preliminary proposal," Camilla said with a smile that Kate was beginning to recognize as particularly dangerous. "But I think it would help ensure that all of our activities are properly coordinated and aligned with our overall objectives." Kate stared at the document in disbelief. This wasn't just about undermining her confidence or questioning her decisions. This was a systematic attempt to strip away her independence and reduce her to a subordinate role within the royal hierarchy. The audacity of it was breathtaking, but what was even more shocking was the way Camilla presented it, as if it were a natural and reasonable development. "I wasn't aware that such a restructuring was being considered," Kate said carefully, fighting to keep her voice steady. "This is the first I'm hearing of any concerns about coordination or alignment." Camilla's expression remained pleasant, but Kate caught a flash of something harder in her eyes. "Well, these things do need to be discussed at the appropriate level first," she said. "I thought it would be helpful to present some options for consideration." The message was clear. Kate was not considered to be at the appropriate level for such discussions. She was being presented with a fait accompli, expected to accept a diminished role without protest or negotiation. Kate excused herself from the meeting as soon as she could manage it gracefully, claiming she needed to review the proposals more carefully before offering her thoughts. But as she walked back to her office, her mind was racing. This wasn't just about personal conflicts or personality clashes anymore. This was about the fundamental structure of her role and her ability to carry out the work she was passionate about. That evening, she called William and asked him to come home immediately. When he arrived, she showed him the document Camilla had presented, watching his face carefully as he read through the proposed changes. "She presented this to you directly?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. Kate nodded. She made it sound like it was just a proposal for consideration, but the way she presented it made it clear that she expects it to be implemented. "William, this would essentially make me a junior member of the royal family, subject to her approval for anything significant." William was quiet for a long time, studying the document. Kate could see the conflict in his expression as he wrestled with the implications. This wasn't just about family dynamics anymore. This was about the future structure of the monarchy and where Kate would fit within it. "Did she mention discussing this with my father?" he asked finally. "No, Kate replied. But she implied that it had already been considered at what she called the appropriate level. I got the impression that I was being informed, not consulted." The next few days brought a series of conversations that would prove to be turning points in the entire situation. William began making discreet inquiries about the proposed restructuring, and what he discovered shocked him even more than it had Kate. It turned out that Camilla had indeed been discussing changes to Kate's role with King Charles, but she had presented a very different version of events than what had actually been happening. According to Camilla's account, Kate had been struggling with her responsibilities and had expressed concerns about being overwhelmed. The proposed restructuring was presented as a supportive measure to help Kate manage her duties more effectively. William was furious when he learned about this misrepresentation. Not only had Camilla been systematically undermining Kate's confidence and authority, but she had been actively working to convince the king that Kate was inadequate to her role. It was a level of manipulation and deception that went far beyond simple family friction. But the most shocking revelation came when William spoke with his father directly about the situation. King Charles revealed that Camilla had been providing him with regular reports about Kate's performance, highlighting what she characterized as mistakes, oversights, and poor judgment calls. Many of these reports focused on incidents that Kate had never been told were problematic, situations where she thought she had handled things well, but which Camilla had reframed as evidence of inexperience or poor decision-making. She told me that Catherine seemed overwhelmed and might benefit from additional support, the king told his son during their private conversation. I had no idea that Catherine was actually performing very well and that these reports might not be entirely accurate. William realized that Camilla had been playing a far more sophisticated game than anyone had understood. She had been systematically building a case against Kate with the king, while simultaneously undermining Kate's confidence through direct confrontation. It was a two-pronged attack designed to isolate Kate and reduce her influence within the family. The full scope of Camilla's treachery became clear when William discovered that she had also been making subtle suggestions to other family members about Kate's capabilities and commitment. During casual conversations, she would express concern about Kate's ability to handle the pressures of royal life, or wonder aloud whether Kate fully understood the weight of her responsibilities. These comments were always framed as expressions of caring and support, but their cumulative effect was to plant seeds of doubt about Kate's competence and dedication. Family members who had no reason to question Camilla's motives began to develop subtle concerns about Kate's performance, creating an atmosphere where her every action was scrutinized and questioned. When William presented Kate with the full picture of what he had discovered, she felt a mixture of vindication and horror. On one hand, it was a relief to know that her instincts had been correct and that the problems she had been experiencing were real rather than imagined. On the other hand, the systematic nature of Camilla's campaign was more extensive and more damaging than she had realized. "She's been working to isolate you," William said, his voice heavy with anger and regret. "Not just from me, but from the entire family. She's been building a narrative that you're struggling and unreliable, while simultaneously creating the conditions that would make you actually struggle." Kate nodded, finally understanding the full scope of what she had been fighting against. "And now she's positioned herself as the solution to the problem she created," she said. "The restructuring proposal isn't just about reducing my role. It's about permanently cementing her control over everything I do." That night, as they sat together in their private sitting room, Kate and William faced the full reality of their situation. This wasn't a problem that could be solved with gentle conversation or diplomatic maneuvering. Camilla had declared war on Kate's position within the family, and she had been fighting that war for months, while Kate remained largely unaware of the extent of the attack. "I need to know that you believe me," Kate said quietly. "Not just about the individual incidents, but about what she's trying to accomplish. This isn't just about personality conflicts or misunderstandings. This is a deliberate campaign to remove me as a meaningful force within this family." William took her hand and looked directly into her eyes. "I believe you completely," he said, "and I'm ashamed that it took me so long to see what was happening. You've been fighting this alone while I made excuses for her behavior." Kate felt a weight lift from her shoulders at his words, but she also knew that belief and action were two different things. The question now is what we're going to do about it, she said. Because she's not going to stop. If anything, she's likely to escalate now that she thinks she has the upper hand. William was quiet for a long moment, and Kate could see him wrestling with the implications of what needed to happen next. Finally, he spoke, and his voice carried a resolve that Kate hadn't heard before. She's forced us into a position where we have to choose sides, he said. She's made it impossible for both of you to coexist peacefully within this family structure. And if that's the case, then she needs to understand exactly where my loyalty lies. Kate felt her heart begin to race as she realized that William was finally ready to take action. The days of hoping for quiet resolution were over. The time for choosing sides had come. The confrontation that would change everything came exactly 1 week after William discovered the full extent of Camilla's campaign against Kate. He had spent those 7 days carefully planning his approach, consulting with trusted advisors, and preparing for what he knew would be one of the most difficult conversations of his life. William requested a private meeting with Camilla, suggesting they discuss some upcoming royal engagements. She agreed readily, perhaps thinking this was an opportunity to further advance her agenda. They met in her private office at Clarence House, a room filled with personal photographs and mementos that spoke to her long journey from outsider to queen consort. I wanted to talk with you about Catherine's role going forward, William began, his voice carefully neutral. I understand you have some concerns about how things are being managed. Camilla's eyes brightened, clearly interpreting this as an encouraging sign. I'm so glad you're open to discussing this, she said, settling back in her chair with the confidence of someone who believed she held the winning hand. I've been quite worried about Catherine lately. She seems to be struggling with the pressures, and I think she would benefit from more structured support. William nodded thoughtfully. Tell me more about these struggles you've observed. For the next 20 minutes, Camilla laid out her case against Kate in detail. She spoke about missed nuances in diplomatic situations, questioned Kate's judgment in selecting charitable causes, and expressed concerns about Kate's ability to represent the family effectively on the international stage. She painted a picture of someone who meant well, but was fundamentally unprepared for the complexities of royal life. William listened without interruption, his face giving away nothing of what he was thinking. Camilla, encouraged by his apparent attention, became more explicit in her criticisms and more detailed in her proposed solutions. She spoke about the need for oversight, for guidance, for someone with more experience to help shape Kate's public role. The restructuring proposal I mentioned, she said, pulling out a revised version of the document she had shown Kate. I've refined it based on some additional thoughts. I really think this would help Catherine be more successful while ensuring that our family's interests are properly protected. When she finished speaking, William was quiet for a long moment. Then, he leaned forward slightly and fixed her with a stare that made something in her expression shift from confidence toward uncertainty. That's very interesting, he said quietly, because the Catherine I know has been performing exceptionally well in her role. The Catherine I know has been receiving praise from diplomats, charity leaders, and members of the public for her professionalism, her warmth, and her effectiveness. The Catherine I know has been building bridges and creating positive change in every area she touches. Camilla's smile became more forced. Well, of course, she has many wonderful qualities. I'm simply suggesting that she could benefit from— Let me be very clear about something, William interrupted, his voice taking on an edge that Camilla had never heard before. I know exactly what you've been doing. I know about the subtle undermining, the constant criticism, the reports to my father that painted Catherine in a negative light. I know about your systematic campaign to isolate her and reduce her influence within this family. The color drained from Camilla's face as she realized that her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling. William, I think there may be some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, William said firmly. I've spoken with my father about the reports you've been giving him. I've talked to other family members about the concerns you've been planting. I've seen the evidence of your attempts to manipulate situations to make Catherine look incompetent or unprepared. I know exactly what this is. Camilla straightened in her chair, and William saw a flash of the steel that lay beneath her carefully cultivated image of supportive stepmother. Catherine is lovely, of course, but she lacks the experience and understanding necessary for— Stop, William said, his voice cutting through her words like a blade. Just stop. We both know this has nothing to do with Catherine's capabilities and everything to do with your desire to control every aspect of royal operations. This is about power, not about helping anyone. The mask dropped completely now, and Camilla's expression hardened. You have no idea what it takes to maintain this institution, she said, her voice cold. Your wife may be charming, but charm isn't enough to navigate the complexities of royal life. Someone needs to provide proper guidance and oversight. Someone like you? William asked, his tone making it clear what he thought of that idea. Yes, someone like me, Camilla replied without hesitation. Someone who understands tradition, who knows how things work, who can ensure that mistakes aren't made that could damage the monarchy. William stood up slowly, and there was something in his posture that made Camilla lean back in her chair. Let me tell you how things are going to work going forward, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Catherine is my wife, my partner, and the future queen consort. She doesn't need your oversight, your approval, or your guidance. She needs your respect, which you will give her, or you will find yourself dealing with consequences you won't like. Camilla's eyes flashed with anger. You can't speak to me this way. I am the queen consort, and I will not be threatened by— You will be exactly what I allow you to be in relation to my family, William said, cutting her off again. You seem to have forgotten that while you may be queen consort now, I am the heir to the throne. And when that day comes, Catherine will be the queen, and you will be the dowager queen consort. The power dynamic you think you have now is temporary. The silence that followed was electric with tension. Camilla stared at William as if seeing him clearly for the first time, and what she saw there seemed to shake her confidence considerably. But more importantly than any of that, William continued, Catherine is the woman I love, the mother of my children, and my partner in life. If you force me to choose between supporting my wife and maintaining family peace, that's not really a choice at all. I will choose Catherine every single time, and I will do whatever is necessary to protect her and our family's future. Camilla tried to regain her composure. Surely we can find a way to work together that benefits everyone. We can, William agreed. But it will be on very different terms than what you've been proposing. You will treat Catherine with the respect due to the future queen. You will stop undermining her work and her confidence. You will end your campaign to reduce her role or influence within the family. And you will make it clear to anyone you've spoken with that your previous concerns about Catherine were misguided. And if I refuse? Camilla asked, though her voice lacked the confidence it had carried earlier in the conversation. William's smile was not particularly warm. Then you'll discover just how much influence the future king actually has, even before he takes the throne. You'll find that your access to information becomes limited, your input is no longer sought, and your own role becomes increasingly ceremonial. You'll discover that I can make your life within this family very uncomfortable indeed. The threat hung in the air between them, and Camilla seemed to be calculating her options. William could see her weighing the costs and benefits of continued resistance against the reality of what he was offering. I want a public apology, William continued. Not necessarily to the media, but to the family. I want you to acknowledge that your concerns about Catherine were unfounded and that you spoke without having complete information. I want you to express your confidence in her abilities and your support for her role going forward. Camilla's jaw tightened. That's quite a demand. It's not a demand, William replied. It's the price of maintaining the current family structure. If you're not willing to pay it, then we'll have to discuss alternative arrangements. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. William could see Camilla working through the implications of what he was saying, understanding that he was deadly serious about his willingness to escalate this conflict if necessary. I may have been overly cautious in my assessment of Catherine's readiness for her role, Camilla said finally, the words seeming to stick in her throat. Perhaps I allowed my concern for the institution to cloud my judgment about her individual capabilities. That's a start, William said. But I need to know that you understand this isn't just about walking back previous statements. This is about completely changing how you interact with Catherine going forward. No more subtle criticism. No more reports to my father about her performance. No more attempts to reduce her independence or authority. Camilla nodded reluctantly. I understand. Good, William said, moving toward the door. Because Catherine has been more than patient with this situation, and my tolerance for any continuation of this behavior is exactly 0. She deserves better from this family, and she's going to get it. That evening, William returned home to find Kate waiting for him in their living room, tension written in every line of her body. She looked up as he entered, searching his face for clues about how the confrontation had gone. It's over, he said simply, crossing the room to take her in his arms. She knows exactly where I stand, and she knows what the consequences will be if she continues this behavior. Kate felt some of the tension leave her body, but she also knew that this was just the beginning of a new phase in their relationship with Camilla. How did she take it? Not well, initially, William admitted, but she understands the reality of the situation now. She knows that if she forces me to choose between you and family harmony, I'll choose you every time. Kate pulled back to look at him. Are you prepared for the consequences of that choice? Because she's not going to forget this, and she's not going to forgive it. William nodded. I've been thinking about this for days, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. You are my wife, my partner, and the future of this institution. Protecting you and supporting you isn't just the right thing to do personally, it's the right thing to do for the monarchy. Over the following weeks, the changes in family dynamics were subtle but unmistakable. Camilla's attitude toward Kate became formally correct rather than actively hostile. She stopped making suggestions about Kate's work and stopped offering unsolicited advice about royal protocols. The reports to King Charles ceased, and when family members asked about Kate's performance, Camilla's responses were neutral or mildly positive. It wasn't warmth, and it wasn't genuine friendship, but it was respect. And for Kate, respect was enough. She could work with someone who disagreed with her as long as they treated her as an equal and refrained from actively trying to undermine her position. The real test came several months later, during a major royal event that required extensive coordination between different members of the family. Kate took the lead on several important aspects of the planning, and Camilla not only refrained from interfering, but actually provided useful support when asked. As Kate watched Camilla interact professionally and respectfully with her during the event, she realized that William's confrontation had achieved something important. It hadn't created love or genuine friendship, but it had established clear boundaries and mutual understanding of the consequences of crossing those boundaries. That night, as they reflected on how far they had come, Kate thanked William for standing up for her when it mattered most. I know that wasn't easy, she said. Confronting family is never simple, especially when the stakes are this high. William took her hand and squeezed it gently. You're my family too, he said. You're the family I chose, the family I'm building, the family that represents our future. Protecting that will always be my first priority. Kate smiled, feeling truly secure in her position for the first time in months. The battle was over, and she had won not through her own efforts alone, but through the unwavering support of the man who had promised to stand by her side through everything. In the end, that support had made all the difference.